You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Sports fans, welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start with basketball. No, definitely not Celtics Nets. What do you think would happen in that game? You knew they'd get blown out. Did you think they'd get blown out that badly? No, but I put $20 on the Celtics -8 last night. I won. You know, it's kind of funny. Some people say never bet against your team. I don't have a problem with it. If you think that your team is going to lose, why not find a silver lining in it? I'm not saying you actively root against them. I wasn't actively rooting against the Nets last night, but I'll tell you, I only made it through the first 5.5 minutes. When they went down 14-0, it's like, okay, they're really going to get creamed in this game, so let me watch some college basketball. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 24 hours or so. Ultimately, gun to my head, I don't think James Harden is being traded. I have no sources on that. I know insiders are split right now. Ultimately, we're at the point where we're just in wait-and-see mode. You can't believe something until you see it. At 3:01 p.m. tomorrow, that's when we'll know for sure. But no, I'm not going to go in depth on that game. I'm going to go in depth on the college games that I watched last night. Starting with Auburn, Arkansas. The Razorbacks upset the number 1 ranked team in the nation. Even though Auburn got really good performances by Wendell Green and Jabari Smith, who hit some really clutch threes, and Walker Kessler had a double-double, 16 points and 19 rebounds, Arkansas was able to pull off the upset. And the reality is, it shouldn't have knocked your socks off that the Razorbacks pulled off this upset. I understand an unranked team beating the top-ranked team in the nation is surprising. And it's okay if you thought Auburn would win this game. In fact, if I had to make a pick, I probably would have picked Auburn. But Arkansas is a really good team this year. Eric Musselman always does a good job with them. Very underrated coach. Their offense is sensational. J.D. Note is leading the SEC in points per game. He had another big game yesterday with 28 points. Audice Tony had a double-double, 14 points and 10 rebounds. So did Jalen Williams, 13 points and 11 rebounds. Off the bench, Devontae Davis had 10 points. You know, the thing about this game that was really surprising was Arkansas's defense stepping up. Yes, the Tigers scored 76 points, but Auburn only shot 38% from the field and 25% from beyond the arc. I mean, the Razorbacks defense stepped up in a big way. J.D. Notte was all over the place. He had 3 steals and 4 blocks. Devontae Davis had 5 steals. I know that had to make Eric Musselman happy. You know, the reality is this is just a really good Razorbacks team. They're better than a lot of people give them credit for. And this is what they're capable of when they're playing to the fullest extent of their abilities. Again, it really shouldn't have knocked your socks off that the Razorbacks pulled off this upset. Especially when you factor in the fact that Auburn really isn't as great as people say they are. I am not in love with this Auburn team. I haven't been all year. I understand they're first in the nation. Great, fantastic. But they've had some really bad games. Like games that you wouldn't expect a number 1 ranked team to have. Barely beating Missouri by 1 point. Barely beating Georgia by 2 points. Even earlier in the season, barely beating USF by 6 points. Barely beating St. Louis by 4 points. This is not a great basketball team. They're not bad. They're really not bad, but people talk about them as a national title favorite. I've never said that. I see a very good team. I see a very, very good offense led by a great coach. Bruce Pearl is a great coach. Him and I actually share a birthday, but their defense is just You watch them play, I don't think they really impress you. I think they look like a really good team. Not a great team. Not a team that you bang your fist on the table for and say, this team is going to win the national title. They do a lot of infuriating things. Like before this game, they were dancing on the Arkansas logo. You don't do that. Why would you give the opposing team bulletin board material? Eric Musselman said after the game, they were watching, they saw that. That's an act of disrespect, and it fuels the Razorbacks. Never give a team added motivation. Never give them bulletin board material. Think about it this way. You wouldn't say before the game that J.D. Notte is a terrible player. He's overrated. He's not that good. Why? Because you don't want to give him added motivation to drop 30. Why would you give Arkansas and their fans added motivation to want to win this game? That may sound cliche, but it's the truth. There are certain things that you just can't do. That's one of them. And you also can't miss 9 of your 17 free throws. If Auburn hits just one more free throw in regulation, they win this game. Think about a guy like Walker Kessler. He was 2 for 6 from the charity stripe. If he hits one more free throw, Auburn wins. They escape. I know Kessler's not a great free throw shooter, but he's got to do better than 2 for 6. That's not going to get the job done. And what's one thing that I always talk about? Free throw shooting. Some of these kids, when you put them on the charity stripe, the nerves get to them. Not Arkansas. The Razorbacks scored 14 points in overtime. 11 of them came in the form of free throws in the final 2 minutes. The other 3 points came from a J.D. Notte 3. So Arkansas won this game because of free throws. They hit 26 of their 32 free throws. Compare that to Auburn, who hit just 8 of their 17 free throws. It's easy to understand why the Hogs won this game. This is a tough loss for Auburn. This was a winnable game. It really was. But because they acted like morons before the game by dancing on the Razorbacks logo, and because they couldn't stop fouling in the final 2 minutes, yes, Jabari Smith hit some big threes, but Arkansas kept answering them with free throws. And because Auburn couldn't sink their own free throws, come Monday, they'll no longer be the top-ranked team in the nation. Congrats, Gonzaga. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. Gonzaga is a good team this year. Their offense is just sensational. They have the best offense in the nation. Not even close. And their defense is better than people give it credit for. You know, I understand that Gonzaga has this reputation of disappointing in March Madness, but last year they were in the title game. I understand they got creamed by Baylor, but still, they made the national title game. They were the second best team in the nation. Look, they needed an epic Jalen Suggs 3 to beat an upstart UCLA team. But before that game, they ran roughshod over their opponents. They destroyed Norfolk State, Oklahoma, Creighton, and USC. I mean, why did Gonzaga have trouble against UCLA and Baylor? Their defense was not that good. UCLA scored 90 points in that game. 81 in regulation. Baylor dropped 86 against them. This year, Gonzaga's defense is exponentially better. And Chet Holmgren is the seminal reason why I love watching this kid play. Oh my God, I think he's going to be a great player in the NBA. He is number 1 on my big board right now. It's not even close. A 7-footer who can shoot threes, who can rebound, who can defend. This guy is prime Kristaps Porzingis. In fact, he may even be better than that. He's going to be a superstar in the NBA. I love watching Holmgren play. With him leading the Bulldogs, I could see them making a lot of noise in March Madness. Let me tell you. Moving on now to Marquette, UConn. A very, very impressive win by the Huskies. They really showcased their rebounding prowess. UConn had 43 rebounds. You know how many Marquette had? 22. UConn had 13 offensive rebounds. You know how many Marquette had? 7. Now, I understand that Marquette isn't a great rebounding team this year. Outside of Justin Lewis, they really don't have any great rebounders. But still, to get dominated on the glass like that is noteworthy. I mean, that's why UConn won this game. Go back and watch it. Every missed shot, UConn was there. Whenever Marquette tried to get something going, UConn just had putback after putback after putback. You know Adama Sanogo is capable of going off on the glass. He's averaging 8.4 rebounds per game. He had 15 rebounds last night. He was outstanding. He also had 24 points. But for a guy like Tyrese Martin to do that, that's noteworthy. I mean, Martin's a really good rebounding guard. He's 6'6". He's very James Harden-like in that regard, in terms of snatching up rebounds. But there's no excuse for him to have 15 rebounds. So when you have two players, Sanogo and Martin, grabbing 15 boards each, you're not going to win. Think about it this way. Those two guys combined for 30 rebounds. How many rebounds did Marquette have? 22. So those two guys, by themselves, out-rebounded the Golden Eagles. It was just utter domination on the glass. I mean, I felt bad for Justin Lewis. He's battling for every loose ball, but he's not getting any help. Lewis had 17 points and 9 rebounds. The guy was trying to keep Marquette in this game. I don't want to say by himself, but it seemed like it at some points. He's like the only guy battling for loose balls. I mean, give Olivier Maxence Prosper credit. He had 18 points. And give Greg Elliott credit. He had 17 points off the bench. But the issue was rebounding. That's something that Marquette is really going to need to improve on if they want to go on a big run this year. I didn't think their overall defense was bad. Alright, that's the hallmark of every Shaka Smart team. I thought Marquette's defense played well enough to win, but when every loose ball ends up in the hands of either Adama Sanogo or Tyrese Martin, that's tough. Yes, you forced the missed shot, but what are you going to do next? You've got to secure the rebound and go from there. Marquette just could not secure rebounds last night. That is why they lost this game. It may seem like I'm harping on this point incessantly. Go back and watch the game. Alright, rebounding is the seminal reason that UConn won 80-72. It's just that simple. Moving on now to Wisconsin, knocking off MSU in East Lansing. And I've got to give Wisconsin a ton of credit for controlling the tempo of this game from the outset. How does Wisconsin want to play? They want to play a low-scoring, drag-em-out game. You know, they're not going to push the pace a ton. They're going to look to just grind you out, play great defense, and just be basically a ground and pound team. From the word go, they set the tempo of this game, and MSU had no answer. The Spartans shot just 21% from beyond the arc. That is abysmal. Gabe Brown, their leading point getter this year, only had 7 points. If Wisconsin can control the tempo and make you play their style of basketball, where there aren't a lot of fast break opportunities, where you're playing slow, and it's, in essence, old school basketball, they are impossible to beat. And give Johnny Davis a ton of credit. He had an off game the other day against Penn State. Wisconsin nearly lost that game. But he rebounded for 25 points in this game. He was the high man. I mean, if Wisconsin had lost to Penn State, everyone would have said it's because Johnny Davis only had 4 points and shot just 2 for 13 from the field. Fortunately for the Badgers, guys like Steven Crowell, Tyler Wall, and Chucky Hepburn were able to step up, so the Badgers survived. Give Davis credit for putting that bad performance behind him. The 24-hour rule is real. In case you don't know what that is, it's the mindset that whether something great happens or something terrible happens, you mull over it for 24 hours, then after that, you move past it, it's already happened, let's move on to the next game. It's something that a lot of young players can struggle with. I'm sure it's something that Greg Gard helped him through. But give Davis credit for implementing it. I'm a big believer in the 24-hour rule. Great job by Wisconsin. When they play like they played last night, they are unbeatable. Moving on now to Purdue, pulling off a statement win over Illinois. And look, obviously, I wasn't in West Lafayette. I was watching the game on TV, but the atmosphere in Mackey Arena was palpable. I don't think I've ever heard a Purdue game get that loud. I mean, Boilermakers fans are good fans. I'm not saying they're not, but they really showed up last night. I mean, look, easy game to get into. The Boilermakers are third in the nation right now. Illinois was 13. But still, for Purdue to show up like that and just dominate the second half, that was insane. I mean, Illinois was up at the half. This was a really competitive game through the first 20 minutes. But then the second half hit, and Matt Painter made some really smart adjustments. He got the ball in Jaden Ivey's hands a lot more. And Ivey was outstanding. He had 26 points. Zach Edey did his thing. He had 13 points. Trevion Williams had 10 points off the bench. Just give Purdue a ton of credit for this win. This is a statement win. It may even leapfrog them to 2. I've seen some people say that Auburn is only going to fall down 1 spot after losing to Arkansas. I could see Purdue now leapfrogging Auburn. Maybe even a team like Arizona leapfrogs the Tigers. I really don't think the Tigers are that good. Now, there was a scary moment in this game for Illinois. And Illinois wasn't awful in this game. Kofi Coburn had 18 points. Off the bench, Andre Curbelo had 15 points. Alfonso Plummer had 14 points. Their defense was just non-existent, especially in the second half. That was pretty surprising because Illinois is a good defensive team this year, but I digress. The scary moment was Trent Frazier needing help to leave the court at one point. He knocked knees with Jaden Ivey, and Frazier went down like a ton of bricks. I mean, he was clutching his left knee. It looked really scary. He was helped off the court. Talk about adding injury to insult, right? It's bad enough that you're going to lose. It's another thing if you lose one of your best players in the process. But fortunately, Frazier did return. It looked a lot scarier than it actually was. He ended up finishing the game. Good for him. He's a tough kid. I'm really happy for him. I like Illinois this year. I do think they can surprise some people. That was just a tough environment, and Purdue's really good. I'm not going to kill Illinois for losing this game. They lost to a better team, and they were playing in a hostile environment. I'm not going to kill Brad Underwood or the Illini too much for that. Moving on now to Santa Clara, knocking off St. Mary's. Hope you stayed up to watch this game. It was actually an exciting game. That's why the Nets were so bad last night. Steve Nash wanted to get out of the Barclays Center as quickly as possible to watch his alma mater take down the Gales. Yeah, that's right. Steve Nash went to Santa Clara. Was actually a great player for the Broncos. This was a really impressive win for Santa Clara. Not a lot of people are giving them love in terms of the bubble watch. And we're at the point now where it's fair to talk about bracketology. Little over a month left before March Madness starts. It's nice to have this win on your resume, knocking off a nationally ranked Gales team, dropping 77 against one of the best defenses in the nation. That's impressive. Good job by the Broncos. I mean, Santa Clara has a great offense. They're 48th in the nation in terms of points per game, 77.4. But they were going up against a Gales team that was only giving up 59.2 points per game. Who are you going to pick? The great defense or the really, really, really good offense? The great defense, right? No, Santa Clara pulled it out. PJ Pipes was outstanding. He had 21 points. Jalen Williams had a double-double, 18 points and 10 assists. He looked like Steve Nash out there. Josip Vrankic had 16 points. This was a statement win for the Broncos. Let me ask you something. Would it stun you if they got in the big dance? I understand we're talking about the WCC, okay? Not exactly a conference that gets a lot of love. But there are some good teams in the WCC this year. Obviously Gonzaga, obviously St. Mary's, but Santa Clara's also really good. San Francisco's really good. Bill Russell must be happy. Even BYU's not that bad. I could see the WCC getting 3 or 4 bids this year. I mean, it's not like I've gone through the exercise of bracketology. I've never done it. I remember trying it one year, and I couldn't figure it out. I don't know how people like Joe Lunardi do it. They're wizards, let me tell you. But you watch these teams play. Teams like the Dons, the Broncos, and the Cougars. They look like they deserve a March Madness spot. I could see them getting into the big dance very easily. As for St. Mary's, this is a tough loss. There's no question about it. Their defense did not play well at all. Santa Clara shot 55% from the field and 40% from beyond the arc. But, the song my mama told me there'd be days like this? Well, there will be games like this. You're going to have games where you just have an off night. It happens. St. Mary's is still a really good team. Randy Bennett does a great job with that program. Has him in the March Madness mix every year. He's by far and away the best coach that the Gales have ever had. I'm not gonna bang tables over this loss. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with Penguins-Bruins. The Bruins were up 2-0 after 1. David Pastrnak had 2 goals. Then the Penguins rallied back to score 4 unanswered goals. Sidney Crosby is 1 goal away from joining the 500 goal club. It's kind of interesting how he hasn't already joined that club, but I digress. The story isn't the game itself. The story is Brad Marchand once again acting like a thug. And that's what Marchand is. Okay, he's a thug. He's a dirty player. Him and Tom Wilson are cut from the same cloth. I mean, the thing that infuriates you about Marchand is he doesn't need to act like that. He's a great player. Perennial point-a-game player. Great two-way player. When everything's said and done, he's probably gonna end up in the Hall of Fame. A guy like Tom Wilson needs to act like a thug because he really doesn't do much else. Yes, he gets 20 goals a year, but he's playing with Ovechkin. Marchand doesn't need to act that way. It just ticks me off whenever I see Marchand act like an idiot. It's one thing if you want to be a little bit of an enforcer and you don't want to be afraid to give a big hit or drop the gloves. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But some of the stuff that Marchand does is just sickening. Remember earlier in the year when he slew-footed Oliver Ekman-Larsson? I mean, that was classless. There's no place for that in the NHL. I mean, if you didn't see what happened last night, I'll tell you. It's the end of the game. The Penguins are up by 2. It's clear as day that they're gonna win this game. Jarry makes a save with 24 seconds left. The whistle is blown. Everyone's prepared to just ride out the last 24 seconds, except Marchand. Marchand is staring down Tristan Jarry like their families have been feuding for generations. When Jarry looks down for a split second, Marchand punches him in the head. Literally, he punched Tristan Jarry in the head. I understand that Jarry's wearing a mask, but still, you can't punch a defenseless player in the head. Jarry did not see that coming. It was classless. Then when Marchand skates by Jarry, the two of them are jawing at each other, and Marchand jams his stick right into Jarry's mask. Just a disgusting display. That's intent to injure. Brad Marchand intended to injure Tristan Jarry there. And there is no place for that in the NHL. Some people may not understand this, but when you're laying down a big hit on someone, or you're fighting someone, you don't want that person to suffer a huge injury. Maybe you want to ring their bell a little bit, but you don't want them to be out for an extended period of time. Brad Marchand did there. Brad Marchand wanted to knock Tristan Jarry out for an extended period of time. And there is no place for that in the NHL whatsoever. Marchand was immediately given a match penalty. Because of that, the NHL gets involved automatically. He was offered an in-person hearing over Zoom to explain why he did what he did. But there's no good reason for why he did what he did. Brad Marchand should get a lengthy suspension. People are throwing out the possibility of 6 games. I want more than that. I want Marchand to know that he needs to stop acting like a fool. I'll be honest with you, I have no problem with Marchand getting 10 games. Maybe that seems a little excessive. I understand if you're a Bruins fan, you may not like that, but this guy is a repeat offender. This guy wanted to hurt Tristan Jarry so much that he went after his head twice. There's just no place for that in the NHL. You want Marchand to stop acting like this? Send a message. The 5-game suspensions and the fines aren't working. Go big. Look, I understand that it's a tough loss. You had a 2-goal lead after 1, then you give up 4 straight. Obviously, the Penguins and Bruins face each other a lot. And it was kind of funny. Early in the game, Tristan Jarry wanted to flip a puck to a Penguins fan that just happened to be in Boston to watch the game. Marchand actually swatted the puck out of Jarry's hand and threw it across the ice. I actually thought that was really funny. I mean, it's not what I would have done. I would have taken the puck and given it to a Bruins fan, not just chucked it across the ice. But I thought that was funny. I don't know if that's what caused this. I'm not saying that's a good reason for why Marchand did what he did, but I think it's noteworthy. Regardless, Marchand needs to be suspended for a lengthy period of time. He can't keep acting like this. Moving on now to Wild Jets. And this was certainly a wild game. Thank you very much. With 7:17 gone in the first period, there were 2 fights happening simultaneously. Marcus Foligno and Adam Lowry were going at it. So were Jordan Greenway and Brendan Dillon. It seemed like that was it. Cooler heads would prevail. But then, about midway through the third period, Foligno and Lowry went at it again. And at the end of this fight, when Foligno had already taken Lowry down, Foligno kneed Lowry in the head. Literally, knee to head. And there's no place for that in the NHL. You can't knee someone when they're down. Okay, this isn't the UFC. Now, I understand that emotions were running high all throughout that game. The Wild and Jets are division rivals. And like I said, this was a chippy game all throughout, but you can't do that. There's an etiquette in the NHL. You can lay a clean big hit all you want. That's fine. But you've got to be prepared for the repercussions. And when you're going at it in a fight and the fight is over, you want to keep jawing at each other, that's fine. But you can't hit someone when they're down. You can't knee someone when they're down. You can't do anything like that. That's just a classless move by Marcus Foligno. He knows better than that. He's a smart player. He's an assistant captain on the Wild. Give him a couple game suspension. I wouldn't go any more than 2 or 3. I don't think you need to go crazy. He's not a repeat offender like Marchand is. It's a classless display. There's no question about that. But it's not as bad as Marchand. Moving on now to the Canadiens firing Dominique Ducharme. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I'm sorry, this is funny. Ducharme takes over for Claude Julien last year. Somehow, someway, gets them into the playoffs. They knock off the Leafs in 7 games. They come back from 3-1 down. They sweep the Jets. They beat the Golden Knights. They make it to the Stanley Cup Finals only to lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But still, you're in the Stanley Cup Finals. You were the second best team in hockey last year. You want to tell me third best because the Islanders would have destroyed the Canadiens if Yanni Gourde didn't score that stupid shorthanded goal? Fine, fair enough. But the Canadiens were still in the Stanley Cup Finals. This year, they have fallen off a cliff. I understand no Carey Price. I understand he has some stuff going on in his personal life that's really tough, and he hasn't played a game all year. I get that. But that is no excuse for this drop-off. The Canadiens are 8-30-7. They are the worst team in the NHL. No one on the Habs has 10 goals. No one on the Habs has 30 points. They are a disastrous hockey team right now. You want to fire the head coach of that team? Look, I understand that, and no one's going to mistake Ducharme for Scotty Bowman anytime soon. But this guy just got you to the Stanley Cup Finals. Alright, 7 months ago, he signed an extension to be the full-time head coach. Now you're firing him despite the fact that he hasn't even coached a full season in the NHL? I mean, that's a tough look. I understand the logic, and I can't begrudge it. But I also understand why people are a little skeptical of this. Is this the right move? Was Dominique Ducharme the seminal reason that the Canadiens are struggling right now? The answer is no, he's not. Maybe he's not helping matters, but wouldn't you have liked him to get at least one full year? Come on. This guy got such a raw deal here. I feel bad for him. He does deserve a second chance. I think he will get a second chance. Let him go to a place where there's a stable GM. The roster is better. Let him go to a place where he'll have time to really develop things. I mean, I don't think Ducharme was the seminal reason that the Canadiens were this bad. I don't like their roster. I'm not a big Nick Suzuki fan. I think he's good, not great. I don't see any great players on the Habs right now. That's on Marc Bergevin. And I understand that the Habs fired Bergevin, they brought in Jeff Gorton, and they brought in Kent Hughes, and the new hierarchy wants to bring in their own head coach. But still, it's just a tough look to fire the guy halfway through this year when he just got you to the Stanley Cup Finals. You want to move on from him after the season? Okay, I can get behind that. I just want him to get a full year under his belt. The Habs really did Ducharme dirty here, and I do expect him to land on his feet. I'll close this show out with some NBA Valk talk. I'll start with the 3-team trade. The Jazz acquired Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Juan Hernangomez. The Spurs acquired Tomas Satoransky and a second rounder. And the Trailblazers acquired Joe Ingles, Elijah Hughes, and a second rounder. Let's attack this team by team. Let's start with the Jazz. When Joe Ingles went down with the torn left ACL a little over a week ago, you had the sense that the Jazz would look to replace him. Did you know that Ingles would go? No, but you knew his spot would be filled externally. The Jazz are right in the thick of the playoff race right now. They're the 4 seed in the West. They owe it to their fans and their players to be aggressive right now. So look, if you knew that you weren't going to re-sign Joe Ingles, he is on an expiring contract, and you can get a solid player in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and a guy who produces when given the opportunity in Juan Hernangomez, I have no problem with that. What did I say yesterday? Nickeil Alexander-Walker isn't a terrible player. Not great. Definitely not great, but I understand the theory of bringing him in and seeing if you can fix him, seeing if playing with guys like Donovan Mitchell and Bojan Bogdanovic and Rudy Gobert, etc., will fix him. If you knew you weren't going to re-sign Ingles, move on from him. Fine, I have no problem with that. And 2 seconds for Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Juan Hernangomez, a good backup power forward when given the opportunity he's always produced, I have no problem with that. I like this move from the Jazz. And just to put a finer point on it, the 2 second rounders in this deal are coming from the Jazz. I'm not sure what years, but they are coming from the Jazz. As for the Spurs, Hernan Gomez wasn't playing for them. He only got into 5 games. I'm not a Tomas Satoransky fan. I said that yesterday. But if you can get a second rounder for a guy who wasn't in your rotation, fine. I have no problem with that. The Spurs probably aren't going to make the playoffs, so build for the future. I'm fine with this trade from the Spurs end of things. As for the Blazers, I don't get this. Is the plan to re-sign Joe Ingles? I'm not mad at that, but you're blowing things up. Joe Ingles is 34. He doesn't fit. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a better player than Elijah Hughes. You know, I said yesterday that the Blazers should view Alexander Walker as a piece of their team going forward. Do they really view Elijah Hughes as a part of their future? I have seen nothing from Elijah Hughes in, granted, limited time, but still, he hasn't earned a more expanded role. I think that is noteworthy. I haven't seen anything from him that makes me think he's going to be a really good player in this league. Alexander Walker does have that potential. I know it came off like I really don't like him yesterday. I think he's a solid player. I think there's a role for him in the NBA going forward. I can't say that about Elijah Hughes. The Blazers are confusing right now. What's the point of adding Joe Ingles? What's the point in getting rid of Nickeil Alexander-Walker? If you like Elijah Hughes, that's fine, but there's got to be a better way to get him. I don't get this trade for the Blazers. This is incredibly confusing to me. Please, 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 trade Damian Lillard at the draft. Ben Simmons for Damian Lillard. Sounds good to me. Think about the starting 5 for the Blazers. I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. Simons, Hart, Little, Simmons, and maybe Chet Holmgren. Or another big man, depending on how the lottery shakes out, depending on what trades happen. That works, but right now, the Blazers are just confusing to me. The Jazz win this trade, the Spurs are the runner-ups, and the Blazers are a distant third. I'll close this show out with the Heat trading KZ Okpala to the Thunder in exchange for a second rounder in 2026. That pick will be the worst second rounder between the Thunder, Mavericks, and Sixers. Also, as part of this deal, the Thunder already had a Heat first rounder. It would have been lottery protected in 2023, 2024, and 2025 before becoming unprotected in 2026. Well, now the first rounder that the Thunder have will be the Heat's 25 first rounder unless it lands in the lottery, in which case it rolls over to 2026. Truthfully, I didn't even know teams could do that. I hope that all makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, it's confusing to me as well. And I like this trade for the Thunder. I don't mind them throwing a dart at KZ Okpala and seeing if they can develop him. I remember liking him coming out of Stanford. Ended up with the Heat. Never really got extended playing time. He's been in the NBA for 3 seasons now, and he's only played in 63 games. But in limited time, I've liked what I've seen. I certainly see some potential in him. I think he can turn into a solid role player. He's only 22. If Sam Presti really liked Okpala in the 19 draft, sure, it's worth taking a chance on him now. And add him to the stable of young guns that the Thunder have. And I don't mind the Heat getting a second rounder for someone who it's clear they were never going to give a big role to. This trade makes sense for both teams. If I had to give a team an edge, I'd say the Thunder, because I could see Okpala working out for him. And the second rounder that the Heat got, who knows what that's gonna turn into. Tomorrow's gonna be a big NBA trade deadline show. I'm gonna break down all the trades that come down the pike. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So if the show comes a little later, that's why. Until then, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.